Ande gyawa shito la tsokyan bardo jipetran.
So to make it so that a concept is able to touch us, now something comes to my mind. Three modes are actually possible for this to happen. The first is when already we have a predisposition. It's something that we have heard a lot in our life, we have seen a lot, other lives also. Uh, Also, when we were children, we heard it a lot in our cultural context. But anyway, we had some predispositions from the past for which we were already ready, and then we get in touch with something that touches us. So we are able to feel that thing. We are able to somehow comprehend it, other than just on a superficial intellectual level. I think that every one of you has already experienced this. Maybe to someone has happened with mathematics or with music or meditation or cooking. We have certain predisposition that are maybe bigger for a certain thing rather than another. And there are other things that when we start to try to learn them, it's more similar to actually remembering them than actually learning them. And for other things, actually, we have to really struggle a lot. And so we have these different things also inside the same thing. For example, for me in Buddhism, like there were some aspects that were difficult, like memorizing, and other things were very easy actually. And so we all have certain predispositions. And the first mode is when we already have like this that we have talked about, and we're able to generate an awareness because there is already a basis. The other way is when we go and listen and read and get in contact with that concept, with that aspect, and then bit by bit, it's something that gets inside little by little. We're able to learn, we're able to comprehend, to get in touch with that reality, not because there is a predisposition, but because there is persistence. So you go there, you persist, and bit by bit, then one is able to do that. And then there is the third possibility that is a bit the shock therapy. That is when one is kind of like hit by something, struck by something, and that makes it so that one, so to speak, goes out of the comfort zone of the normality where he is in, and then he opens to that concept. And this, in the Buddhist tradition, it's something that has always been used in this shock therapy. Like for example, once maybe I was like 16 or 18 years old, I don't remember exactly, but many years ago, I was invited to go and speak in the midst of the São Paulo Fashion Week. It's like the one that we have in Milan, and then there is also the Fashion Week of São Paulo. And first they brought me to see like a bikini. It was a bit strange to sit there, but I also remember these very tall girls, and you're sitting on a low chair, and also the perspective is a bit strange. But anyway, as it finished, I was finding myself. Uh, I was there, and I was there, and then at a certain point I have to talk, and then it's like, okay, there I don't have much public there, but what I'm saying actually goes out of the speakers of a lot of people inside their houses. And so I started talking, and it was a bit hard. The first thing that I said is, let's remember that we shall die. So it was like a shock therapy to a bit bring back the awareness. And very often there is nothing better than that. And there it worked. And I had just a few minutes, and then I remembered, okay, first I hit a bit hard, then later, okay, we talked about the fashion, it's fine, the fashion, but let's try to give it a meaning. Like, for example, in the Mahayana and Vajrayana tradition, we have all these deities. For example, here we have like Tara and others that have a lot of jewels because they represent the inner qualities. So you use the jewels, the ornaments, the clothes to represent some inner qualities. And so that was to try to give it a meaning. Okay, we can wear jewels, but let's try to represent something. The fact is that very often we spend our lives as if we were in a sort of kind of carousel, like a theme park, where we go from where we have like you have the roller coaster, the various attractions, and then what do you have in the middle? You have a lot of queue, you have the boredom, you have the effort of choosing, all the waiting, all the difficulties that are in between. And I remember once when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I remember that it was like something in the middle of this, like okay, the entertainment, and then like the long queues, the boredom, and so on. But the fact is that very often we spend our lives between running away from our problems and then enjoying our pleasures. So it's okay to enjoy the pleasures, the good food, and all these kind of things, the moment of success. And then there is the moment of calmness, and then there is the difficulty of the body and the economical problem. And then we have to solve this thing and the other. There is always something. And we all have these problems. I don't believe that there is absolutely anyone here among us that can say, I don't have problems. And if someone tells me it has already happened, okay, I tell him, enjoy the moment, because in any case, sooner or later, it will come. And it's just like that. So what happens is this, that we spend most of our lives and we occupy an enormous quantity of energy in our lives to solve our problems and to try to obtain and consume the pleasures. And life passes. life is consumed. We are very distracted. The great master of the 11th century, Atisha Dipankara, that is represented on my right with the red hat, that brought the Buddhism from the 11th century in Tibet. He was one of the greatest masters in the history of Tibet, a very important character. And there is a passage in a text from Atisha that is an advice that he gave heart to heart. He went to Tibet, then there was a long story about this, and we won't tell it, otherwise we will spend the whole evening with this. But anyway, with a lot of effort, Atisha came to Tibet, and he was a very important person in the monastery from which he was from, in India. And when he had to come back, then he had the permission to stay in Tibet just for a few years, and when he had to come back, then there was a war in the middle, and he wasn't able to do that. And then there was a disciple of him that asked him to give him some advice for the path to enlightenment, and then he wrote what became a very important text. And this was the moment where he was about to say goodbye and to go to India after 2 or 3 years that were very intense. And the king of the time that had invited him, he goes to him and he makes him a request: please, great master, after all this wonderful time that we have been together here, where you have given a lot to all of us, can you give us a last teaching, a last advice? And here there is this text that is written in verses, very beautiful, where Atisha gives his heart advice, like the essence, in a context where they believed, at least superficially, that they wouldn't have seen each other in that life. And in this text there is a passage that says, during the night we sleep, at day we are distracted. Or better, at day we are distracted, and during the night we sleep, and soon we will die. The things to be known are many, and soon we will die. That's what he says. And so to say that there are a lot of distractions, and that we sleep during the night, and we will sleep soon, said in the 11th century in Tibet, I ask myself, what would I have said now in 2025 in Milan? We have many distractions.
Magari sarebbe detto: di giorno siamo distratti, di notte non dormiamo, non riusciamo a dormire, che è pure peggio, no? Stiamo svegli cercando di dormire.
We live also in the illusion of being immortal, but anyway, soon we will die. And unfortunately, very often we spend our lives kind of running after something that we actually don't really know what it is, that can be translated in a sort of comfortable survival. At the basis of this, but also this isn't like something new of today. It's something that has been there since always in all cultural contexts. It's not because of the modern society. And it starts a bit from our necessity, this instinct of survival, and also starts from that deep attraction to happiness and aversion to suffering. This is the force that guides us constantly. There is a moment in the teachings, that is the point from which I wanted to start today, that says, So let's
Quindi teniamo questo
keep this here on the side for a moment, the fact that we want to be happy and not suffer, and that we spend most of our lives distracted, actually trying to be happy, not suffer somehow. We try to avoid to be sick or not well or not happy, and we try to obtain what we think that makes us happy. That's what we naturally do.
naturalmente.
And there is a point
C'è un punto
in the
in
teachings
cui
where it says what
quello che
distinguishes
distingue
whether something is mundane or spiritual,
mondano o spirituale,
that goes beyond the fact of being Buddhist or not, but whether it belongs to a spiritual path or not, what makes a difference
quello che fa da soglia per
is
dividere
whether that action is done with the intention
con l'intenzione
for it to be for this life or that it transcends this life. What does it mean?
che cosa vuol dire?
What are the things
Sono le cose
that don't transcend
non
this life,
trascendono questa
that
vita,
are just of this
sono
life?
solo di questa vita.
Economical
Le
things,
cose economiche
there is
prova di portarla oltre.
who tries to bring this further.
Non è uno scherzo.
In the Tibetan culture, they have been kind of smart with this. They recognize their incarnations, and then they bring the material things to the reincarnation, and they also try to do this in our modern Western society. And it's like I die, I make like a trust of 2050 million, let's say, and then when I die, I tell a person to do this, to leave this to my reincarnation, and to give him a percentage if he finds my reincarnation. The reality is actually that we can't bring anything with us, and we can't bring our name, our image. The fact when you're born from scratch as an image. You don't bring like your relationships, also your social position. You don't bring any of that when you die. The body, of course, not. So, in a few words, what we have today that doesn't transcend death are our material things, our image, social position, and so on, and our body. Anything that it's done that remains within this sphere is mundane. Doesn't matter where, if I do the meditation, the recitation of mantra, the study of philosophy, whatever, that it's a spiritual tool. But if the goal is in favor uniquely of this sphere of body, material things and image, then it remains a mundane action. I can recite 1,000 mantras with the intention of being recognized as a great meditator. What is my goal and my image? Or I want to do something so that I can feel better, have a better health, which is good, but still it's about this body, this life. Or I can do something about the economical situation, material thing, it's about this life. So what is said to be mundane is not necessarily negative, but it's something that it's limited. spiritual is what transcends this life that it's there today, but that goes on. What transcends this life are the inner characteristics that are not conceptual, the theoretical knowledge, Okay, so first we've seen, okay, that at the basis we want to be happy, not suffer, and the path that we will take and what we want depends on where we project our happiness and what do we mean by suffering. And the difficulty that we have here is that we have already talked about this innumerable times and I don't have problems of repeating other innumerable times, because the point is not to develop knowledge, but the fact is that we have to change paradigm, and for this we need time. But how can I say? It's a bit like when there is a sickness. What we want to get rid at the beginning is the symptom. Once we have understood the symptom, we must then remove the state of unbalance, that is so the sickness itself. But in order to stop the sickness, I also need to stop the cause of the sickness, otherwise it's not enough. And in a majority of cases, also speaking on a physical plane, we take care more of the symptoms rather than the sickness or its cause, even more, even less. Okay, when there is like something immediate, like you eat something and you feel sick, okay, then I will stop eating that. But when it's not so obvious, then it's more challenging. Also, because sometimes, or very often, we like the causes. It comes to my mind like personal things, because actually to make examples on others doesn't really work. This point I have a problem of health, and a while ago I was here, and I say that I had some hernia and in the neck, and then I was quite okay, and now I came back with full strength, and then at the end I say, okay, my arm hurts, and then when one as an arm that is hurting, what is the priority? Okay, to not have the pain in the arm, but the pain in the arm comes from the neck. But the cervical pain, what is the cause of that? And here, after a lot of researches, I've been to a lot of doctors and done what I could on this. The logic says that it makes some sense, and it starts from digestion, and you say, okay, what does it have to do, like mozzarella with the pain in the arm? Can you explain me? The first time that they said that, I said, no, okay, come on. And actually, it has to do with that, because chronic problem at the intestine, so a lot of also swellness caused by intolerances and other things, creates tension in the intestine, and then that tension ends up pulling the blade that then pulls the neck here, and then it creates a whole tension that during with time it created an hernia that now it ends in the finger of my hand. And so I go to the osteopathist, and he says, you should be careful to what you eat. So what happens is that if I don't understand deeply and I don't believe deeply in the cause, in the initial cause, then I will not really change that. I will not really take care of that. Because mostly I will be looking at the symptom. And the day that they will give me some painkillers, or that I do a therapy that works to remove the pain, will I do all the effort to change my lifestyle? I hope so, but what is the tendency? No. And when we look on a deeper way in our life, I make another example also to get where I want to get to today. When there is something that is out of balance, that is not well, the body manifests that. It makes us see that, so that we can take care of that. And that's surprising how the body is intelligent. Okay, there is like an alarm ringing, which will ring more and more until I can actually solve that. And the same thing happens on an emotional level also. When we have an experience and we are not able to close a cycle, the so-called traumas, when we live something that is difficult and we are not able to close that circle, we are not able to run away or to solve it, and we're kind of stuck in that experience. What happens is that there is like a knot, a blockage, and our system will want to show us that in any possible way. But our tendency when a trauma is manifested is not to heal the trauma, to listen to that symptom and understand where does it come from. Our tendency is to reinforce the trauma even more, to repeat those dynamics. I feel abandoned because at a certain point of my life when I was a kid, I don't know, at a certain point I had this very strong feeling of being abandoned, and I am stuck in that feeling, and then from that moment that feeling keeps coming up, and instead of seeing it there is like a blockage that I need to go and face, that is more like an emotional memory than something that is happening in the present moment. Our tendency is, okay, if I feel abandoned, it's because I am abandoned. Who is abandoning me? Definitely I will find someone, with no doubt. And very often it's about the people that are closest to me, because it's easy to find like a reason for which you have abandoned me. You called me, I called you and you didn't answer, I sent you a text message and you didn't reply in those 30 seconds, I was talking about an important thing and you weren't there listening with the right attention as I was expecting. I can find thousands of things. Even sometimes one can get to the point where you have abandoned me, you haven't seen me, you weren't there for me, and I feel abandoned because you didn't see my need, but you didn't manifest it, but you should have seen it. There are really like thousands of possibilities that can come out. But the fact is that our tendency is that when there is a trauma, when there is something, our system, the body, mind, will try in every possible way to show us that. And we see that through an inner experience, a sensation, a feeling. When I feel abandoned and there is that emotional memory coming up, instead of understanding why do I feel like this, and to try to listen to that symptom and eliminate the cause, we usually say, okay, I feel abandoned or I feel sad, it's because there is a reason around me for which I feel like this. So let's look for the guilty, let's look for the situation or the person, very often going to reinforce that dynamic where we have already been for a long time. When actually we are able to understand that my suffering is not because of what is there, but because of how I live it. We have a big fortune in the context where we live. I generalize for all of us that we are here, okay? I cannot speak for everyone in the sense that I don't know in details the life of everyone, but in general, do we have the minimum material to sustain ourselves? Yes, we have much more than the minimum. I don't know, when has it been the last time where we really had to face a necessity of survival? Never, probably. And so we are in a very privileged position. So material problems, real material problems. I'm not talking about the unnecessary problems. I can't buy the new iPhone, or I can't have my vacation as I wanted, or my house is not fine, I want a new house, or I have the house in Milan, or I don't have the house at the sea, or whatever, like I want to change clothes, and actually it's all a matter of comparison. I had a friend that suffered for years, and he was really suffering a lot because his friends were buying banks, and he also wanted to buy a bank and he couldn't. Everyone has his own problems. And in his context, the fact that he wasn't able to buy a bank made him like a failure. And what speaks louder, money or image? The image very often is purely a matter of image. But anyway, from the material point of view, is the thing is, are we well or not? In general, yes, then okay, there is maybe who struggles a bit more to get at the end of the month, and here I open and close a quick parenthesis. I remember an American couple, unfortunately, I never remember names because I never read them well, I don't give them importance, but anyway, there was this American couple, and they were living in New York, and then at a certain point they had a lot of success in life, they both had worked well and studied well, and as they did in the US, they took like a very big debt to go to the best universities, and so after that they got a really good career and so on. And at a certain point they bought the beautiful house, the beautiful car, and they were doing these beautiful vacations, and they were always running in order to maintain this life. And really they were like an example of success of life as we know it in the West. And at a certain point they realized that were working to sustain all of that they were living to sustain all of that, and their passions, they weren't able to sustain those anymore. Like for example, she had the passion for dancing, she wasn't able to do that because she had to work more, because then how could she pay the debt of this or that? And then at a certain point, what they both did was to sell the house, close the mortgage, then sell the house, and then they bought a smaller house, and they changed the job. They did like a sort of part-time job, and they put their energy in dance, in what they liked, and to start to live with what was nourishing them, what made them feel well, seeing that if they had less, then they had to dedicate less time to have the necessary things to sustain themselves, because it's not true that if I earn more, I have more. If I earn more and I spend as much, then at the end of the month it's the same thing. Otherwise, we really get into that dynamic where, okay, I have the car to go to work, and then I work to pay my car. We create a lifestyle that has like all its costs and everything, that it's just an illusion of happiness, and then at the end we have to maintain a rhythm that it's actually harmful, and that at a certain point we're not able to sustain anymore, in order to, on the other hand, maintain everything else that we have done. I think we know this. And then they created a whole life philosophy like minimalistic, and they had a lot of people that started following this and so on. And the idea is that, okay, to have the minimum necessary, and then to take life in your hands to really do what you like to do. You have less and you consume less, and you need to earn less. But the point here is we have enough for our lives. We are well. We live in a social context that is good. Italy is a wonderful country. I know many countries. I've traveled really many places. And also Lama Gangchen was always saying that Italy is beautiful. It's not as rigid as Switzerland, and also not too messy like India. I really like Italy. It has many qualities. We are in a very beautiful country. Now, without getting to touch like a more delicate matter, I've seen many countries, and I've seen people from many countries, and I think that the healthcare system is one of the best that exists, for how much we can also list a lot of things that are not well and so on. It's also something that you don't find so easily. For example, Brazil, India, Nepal, and so many other places, also the United States actually. So we live in quite a good context. The point where I want to get to, but from the point of view of the external context, are we well or not? Do we have like all the cards that are needed in order to be well? It's not easy to say, but yes or no? Yes. Yes, we have the basis, yes. Then maybe you have this small thing here, that small thing there, but at the basis, we have it. So if we look from our screen and we look at the reality of other places, we are much more than doing better than them. But our suffering, where does it come from? It's just predominantly a mental suffering, anxiety, fear, dissatisfaction, sadness, conflicts, interpersonal conflicts, and so on. The point is that today we live in a context where having a situation that is external, material, social, that is good, it helps us to be able to see more easily that this is not enough. Because one doesn't have the minimum, then one imagines that, okay, by having that, everything will be fine. When actually, but when you can't take care of your health, when you don't live in a safe place, when you don't have to eat, what is the priority? To have like a doctor, to be able to have the medicine, to be able to sleep without having the fear of having bombs falling on my head, having food. This is the absolute priority, and one imagines that by having that, one will feel well, and of course you will feel better. But what we are able to see is that once we have these conditions that are necessary, they are not enough in order to be really well. And this is something that we have the possibility of seeing. And so this state of well-being happens by satisfying some of the necessities that we have that are... We mostly have 4 types of necessities. The material necessity. Let's think of every necessity as a container. That when you feel one, then it just goes out. It doesn't go and feel the others. So we have the material necessity, the emotional necessity. Then we have the need of being loved, of giving trust and receiving trust, of connecting, of feeling of belonging. It's one of the emotional needs. Then we have the third type of necessity, of need. That is the need for security. For as much I have money and material security, people that love me, good relationships, if I live in a context where I don't have I'm not sure of my survival, I'm afraid for my life and all these things. For example, me coming from Brazil, I met many people that had this kind of experiences. And this completely takes away the stability. So we need security. And then we need meaning for life, which is the spiritual need. So to feel that life has a meaning. Why am I living it? Is there something more rather than just simply the survival? So we need we have material needs, then emotional needs, security needs, and then spiritual needs. Once we have filled the first container, for as much we can continue to put things in that, it just goes out, and it doesn't fill the second container. And if we observe, we dedicate most of our lives filling the first container. then sometimes we try to expand that container, and then more than the needs becomes like the wishes, and we try to fill that emotional void with the first. But it's not enough. It does work. So, other than having the minimum that is necessary materially, okay, we need some comfort, then we also need to love, to be loved, to have trust one in the other, to have some healthy relationships, and not being in a context of conflict, of hatred, of rancor. We need to be emotionally balanced. We need to have healthy relationships. This is a need that we have. We need to be in a safe context, both from the physical point of view, also from the mental, emotional point of view. Because if I have a context where materially I have everything, I have good relationships emotionally, but I live in the fear that tomorrow artificial intelligence will come and will take everything and this will happen or that, what happens when I live that I have some fear? That fear will create threats. The threats create stress, anxiety. So to live in a certain security, with a certain security, is fundamental. And I repeat, the security is not just living in a context where I know that there is no war and so on, because very often we live most of our threats mentally. And they're about the future, they're about like uncertain future, and how can I say, one of the best ways to manipulate someone is to put him in a state of alert. I don't know if this is clear. Because it takes away the reason, but I don't want to get into this now. But we need security. And then, once we have this, if we don't give a meaning to our lives, it becomes empty. And also that generates a state of imbalance. And so we have these needs. So our suffering, on the other hand, comes from not having the minimum necessaries materially. When the first container is empty, we suffer more, yes. So it's necessary to have food in a healthy way. It's necessary to have a body that is as healthy as possible, to eat in a good way, be in a good context, and so on. That is important. When we are not well emotionally, when we don't have healthy relationships, and we're not able to get in touch with the best part of ourselves, so we're not able to love and feel loved, we're not able to trust, we're not able to receive trust. So we are in conflict with the past, and this brings us to not live the present well and also the future. Then we suffer more. And this brings us also to the void of the third container, because if I have a lot of rancor, if I have a lot of delusions about the past, then I'm not able to live well the present, and what perception do I have of the future as a threat, and so I don't feel secure. And when I live in this, I don't even have inner space to be able to see the fourth container. I know that maybe sometimes I see it far away, but I don't really think about it feeling it, because I still have to feel the others. And when we feel the others and the fourth is not full, you feel like a sort of void, a sense of void that also needs to be filled somehow. One of the important steps in this is to reflect, each one of us can ask ourselves, what is the container that I need to fill? What is my priority? And the interesting thing is that when we talk about the second container, that is what the majority of us needs, I think. Because the first, okay, we all have. Isn't it? The problem of the first is that sometimes we stretch it too much and then we constantly have to put in because it seems that it's not full, but actually it's full. the second container, the emotional need, the interesting thing is that it's not about the context in which we are, but how we feel. It's not whether I am loved but it's actually whether I feel loved. It's not whether I am seen by the others but rather if I am seen, if I feel seen by the others. Is this clear? And here it's fundamental because otherwise we get into the dynamic where we say, no, look, the Lama has said I have my container of emotional needs. It's for this, see, that you have to dedicate more time to be. And we start to victimize ourselves and we blame the world and we remain in that dynamic, in which we have already been a lot. But actually, the solution is yes to create healthy relationships, and that is beautiful. It's beautiful when we receive love, when someone manifests love towards us. But if I don't do my part, then you can give all the love that you want, but then I will always feel that it's not enough. And here, a certain maturity is required, but this maturity is born initially from revisiting our priorities. And the interesting thing is that when we really take care of this container, then we get into the spiritual path. We start to. Even also without having felt the fourth of the meaning of life. When we start taking care of what transcends, then it's when we enter the spiritual path. And the beauty is that actually it's what works the most, because when one is well with oneself, then is well also with the others, and one feels loved and is able to trust the word, and is at harmony with the past and the present and able to trust the future, then one is well. And so this, for me, is one of the most important points for which we have to take care. But in order to do this, it all starts from the priority that we give to it. Because the difficulty that I see, and I'm sorry if I'm so direct, is that very often it happens to recognize the importance of feeling our emotional needs, of taking care of them, but we keep giving priority to the material ones. We are really not able to let it go. I don't know if this is clear. Because life is made up of how many hours in a day? 24. And how many hours do we sleep by night? Like 8, 7, 6, depends. 13, I don't know. Good for you. Okay, my record has been 23. But okay, once I was coming back from Borobudur in Indonesia and I slept 23 hours. But anyway, what happens is that, okay, let's generalize, we spend 8 hours sleeping. How many hours on the phone? I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know, eh? But if one checks now the smartphones have like how much time I've spent, it's like crazy actually. How much time do we spend working? So how much time do we spend taking care of material things and consuming material things? And how much time do we spend also for this body? Eating, digesting, going in the bathroom, washing oneself, and resting, and all that comes with it. Also, it's crazy without talking about the aesthetical aspect. How much time do we give to the body? A lot. And then at the end, what is the percentage in one day that we dedicate to acting with awareness, for taking care of our emotional needs. %, like talking about hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes, if we get to that. That is maybe the 15 minutes that one sits to meditate. Also, maybe one is meditating not even to taking care of the emotional needs, just to let the stress go and to relax a little. And so, we really need to revisit our priorities. And it's when I see the priority and I say to myself, okay, the important thing is to love, is to feel love, to be generous, to be able to cultivate satisfaction, to create that inner richness. And when that becomes the priority, then I can be in the queue at the bank, that doesn't exist anymore, the queue at the bank, or in the metropolitan station, or at work, or whatever, and I can take care of that because I have the capacity of looking at the others with attention, and I can try to be more generous, more aware, more present. There is an infinity of things that I can do. And this is something that can be done in every context that we find ourselves, and that makes all the difference. Because at that point, it's not really important what I'm doing, but what am I cultivating, in what way I'm transforming myself. Because at the end, that's what goes on. So when we talk about what transcends this life, we can start from understanding what transcends the day, what transcends the work, what transcends the moments that are there. That is not what will come after it, but it's what is there now that will also be there after. Because me, in order to face a situation, if at the end I have like bad liver, in other words, if I accumulate rancor, nervousness, sadness, anger, and so on, then when that thing ends, for us, how much it may have gone well from the material or whatever point of view, the feelings that I've cultivated, I will bring them with me. And so when we find ourselves in front of a situation and someone behaves in a way that we don't like, I don't know if it has ever happened. Like, sometimes it can happen. Let's say that we find ourselves in front of a person that speaks to us in an aggressive way, that does something that we believe is like an injustice. Everyone should think his own experience. Can you imagine a situation? The way that the other person behaves is like a problem that we have, or like of the other person. In general, yes, it's my problem because you're doing this to me. If there wasn't a problem to me, then I would be indifferent. But am I indifferent to what the other person does? No. So we leave that as if that was our own problem. And so in that moment, we put ourselves in the position that, okay, in order for me to be well, then you should stop doing that. And then as long as you keep doing that, then I will not be able to be fine because you make me feel bad. And for as much as we can believe and try and everything, it's not possible to change the other. And how the other behaves is not a problem of ours from the point of view that we don't have the solution to that. So the way that you behave towards me actually is a problem that you have. and how I interact with your behavior is a problem. It's my problem. I repeat once again to see if it enters in each one of us. I'm not saying like that it goes like from here to here, but like a little bit that it goes down. The way that the other behaves, no matter what he or she does, it's not problem of my problem, because I cannot solve it. I can try to change the way of interaction, I can try to not be in the presence of that person, I can do many things. But what I do is about the way with which I choose to interact with you. What you do towards me, it's not my problem, it's your problem. And how I interact in front of your action, and how we interact physically, mentally, and verbally, it's my problem. That is up to me. And so I can choose whether I stay in the room or not. To me, it has already happened years ago, of a person that had a habit of talking with others in a quite an aggressive way, and then one day we had to do something together, and he starts to pull that out. I went to that person and said, like in a firm and gentle way, and said, I always treat you with respect. If we want to work together, if we want to do something together, I also expect this from you. If you're not able to do this, then we don't work together. Then I closed the door, and I went away. And it has never happened again. The other times he was always kind, and so on. So I cannot solve you, but I can choose how to interact with you. So I'm not saying that we should always be passive towards everything. I'm not saying that. But we shouldn't be the victim. And not only I can choose how to interact with you on a physical level, but also how what I say, what I speak, it also conditions my reality. The narrative conditions my reality. The way that I react also mentally conditions my reality. And this is something that depends from us. But here we have to do a collective brainwash to remember this again and again. The most difficult things are the realities that are not so black on white, because it's a bit like, comes to my mind the symbol of the recycled bin, where you have like two arrows, one is curved and the pushes the other. The context where I find myself as an influence on me, and how I live it as an influence on the context. So one starts and influence the other. So I feel sick because I find myself in difficult situations, or I find myself in difficult situations because I'm not able to live them in a different way. The answer is one and the other, both. The main question is not what is the cause, because there isn't like the cause. It's like a cycle that goes together, but it's where can I do something that changes the dynamic in a way that it can be improved, and that we can get out of it. The point is not whether it's your problem or my problem if we are fighting. Also, because in Brazil you say, if one doesn't feel like it, then two don't quarrel. So the point is not who started. The point is, what can I do in order to be well in the situation and to try to find like a more sane interaction in front of the situation where I found myself. And so I'm sure that each one of us that is here has his or her own issues. Now we don't open that, because otherwise, if we start to do some auditing about that, once we've done it with Lama Gangchen, we were in the mountains of Kongawa in the Andes, and Lama Gangchen asked to each one, if we stayed there at least 4 hours, there were like 60 people. Actually, it was very beautiful in many aspects, but it was different context. Then when this thing starts, it's not like you can say, okay, no, sorry, now your time is finished. Maybe there is who says his own thing in 3 minutes and who takes like 1.5 hours. But it's nice context. It's nice when you can do this in other contexts. But each one of us interacts with his or her own reality and can choose how to interact within like a boundary of action. We don't have complete freedom of changing everything, but we have a lot that we can do. And I repeat once again, what we can do starts from the priorities that we give. In Buddhism, what is said is that the first step for a profound spiritual path is called Neijung. So it's the short version of these two words. The one means certainty and the other means emerge. If one is like underwater, one goes out, one emerges out of something. So it's the certainty of being able to emerge. That is also, it's like both like a wish to go out and the certainty to be able to do that. And this term often has been translated in many books. You will find it as renunciation. Unfortunately, the term renunciation, renounce, brings about a concept that is negative of sacrifice, when it's actually not that. Yes, we have to renounce, but we have to renounce to suffering, the causes of suffering. But the term, actually there isn't a word in Italian. Some terms, when they are translated to English, also in Italian becomes like something that's really, it's even worse, the definitive emergence. But it's a certainty to be able to get out of something, but from what? From a state of a psychophysical imbalance. Because as long as my body and my mind will be polluted by what are called the mental defilements and the negative karmic force generated in the past, there are all the interactions that we have started and that are giving their fruits. And as long as there will be these two, then there will be suffering. And that is called the all-permeating suffering, the traditional term. That is, using the more philosophical term, it means that as long as the aggregates, that is like the body and mind, in a few words, will be taken, will be polluted by ignorance, selfishness, anger, attachment, unlimited attachment, dissatisfaction, the so-called mental defilements, and from the inertia, the force of the negative actions that we have taken in the past, these two together will create this cycle of suffering that is called samsara. This so-called renunciation is the certainty not only that, but also the wish, the strong wish to get out of that, but also the wish to reach a durable, profound state of joy and peace, that one believes that, okay, it doesn't depend anymore from the context where I am, but from an inner state that I believe I can reach. So I believe that I can get out, and I believe that I can do it. From what do I want to emerge? From what do I want to get out? To emerge, we say emerge because there is the analogy of the ocean of suffering is used, the ocean of samsara. There is this constant cycle of mental defilements, action, and results. And so the basis is what we want. And we have already said this innumerable times and we will repeat it. But can I really be at peace or not? To imagine this, and when we're able to imagine it, it's really something powerful. We can do a small exercise that I call the Buddhist advertisement. Advertisement is something really powerful. What is the function of advertisement? To make something known in order to create desire so that one can invest his energy into that. The Buddhist advertisement will be something like this. Imagine your life. For an instant, allow yourselves to observe it. Let's allow ourselves to observe our lives, to observe our body, our social condition, the people with which you interact, your working reality, your economical situation, material situation, relational situation, the situation in the family. Let's try to make like a sort of painting and to put all the characteristics that we have of our life in front of us, and to make like a sort of painting with all the different shades, putting all the colors of what our life is today, the people with which we live, the place where we live, the social and cultural context where we find ourselves, the local and international situation, the uncertainties of the future. Let's put everything that one has that is part of his or her own life, let's just put it there with clarity. And once we're able to do this and put this in front of us, then we allow ourselves for an instant to dream, to imagine. And let's imagine how would our life be? How would your life be with your body, with your material situation, with everything that is there, with some changes? How would your life be if you didn't have any more conflicts towards the past? If you would be free from rancor? How would your life be if you wouldn't be there so attached to how things should be, but if you would more be able to flow with how things are, kind of adapting, having a deep satisfaction of how things are, and adapting yourself to what is there, without being there to judge how things should be, how our lives will be if we wouldn't be attached to expectations, if we will be at peace with the past, at harmony with the present, at harmony with the future. How would our lives be if we would be able to get rid of all the rancors, of all the fears, if there wouldn't be any more hate, jealousy, if there would be harmony between us, with ourselves, and from ourselves with the others. If there was satisfaction and finally peace, would that be a good life? Yes, no? And the good thing is that it's possible. But we will not be able to desire something if we will not be able to, and we also don't allow ourselves to imagine it. And when we observe this life, then we say, wow, what a beautiful life. And we allow ourselves to fall in love with that and to say, yeah, I want that. Then we start working in that direction. And we are really able to do a lot. And I really mean this. Because as long as we are there waiting for the day that will happen and that will be like that and here and there, then it will never happen. Because when one thing ends, then something else begins. The problem is not the problems that we have, but the priorities that we give. What do we want? And in the meanwhile, that we have like a job at the office, or we are cleaning, washing the dishes or whatever, if we are able to live that by giving priority to living this life in a certain way, then it's wonderful. We can do really a lot. A while ago I was reading the life of the great practitioner in the past. Let's see if we can find it. There should be an image of his. Okay, when there is that image of Lama Gangchen with many small images are the 84 Mahasiddhas. And among these, there is one who was recognized as one of the previous lives of Lama Gangchen. He was called Darikapa. Lama Gangchen was telling that he was a king, that at a certain point he meets a spiritual master. If I remember well, it was called Druipa. And then he offers everything to this master. He offers his kingdom, he offers all the money that he had. Look, he says, you have transmitted to me something that is so important that I would like to give you the best. And so he offers the best to give him the best life and with power, richness. And the master says, I don't want that thing. That is your problem, not me. To me, like to sit there, do hours and hours of meetings and manage like a kingdom and to follow along all the economical problems and to sit there and take care of 1,000 things, and I don't want that. That is your problem. What you're giving me, it's like not something good. It's not like a gift. I don't want that. And that made him reflect. And he said, wow, he's right. And then he went to his minister. They went there together to this master. This master was living in a solitary, faraway place. And so the king left everything to his son or something. And he went to the master and he said, please guide me on the path as an offering. Okay, because you couldn't accept what I gave you, then I offer myself. I offer myself not metaphorically. I really offer myself. I am at your service fully. And he accepts, and then he and his minister together, they were friends, they do this. And so he gives them the initiation, he guides them on the spiritual life, and they start to live together in a simple way, practicing, meditating during the day. Then one day, as they are in one place, the master goes there and he finds like a place where there was like a house. There was like a house of prostitutes, actually, where there were prostitutes, and it was like a place of pleasure for men, let's call it like that. And he goes there and asks the who owned that place, that woman, and he asked her if she wanted to buy his disciple, 500 coins, okay, yeah, of gold for 12 years, okay. And he sells him to her for 12 years. And his job was to clean the feet of the women, to wash the place and so on. Okay, you have given your life to me, now I sell you. So that was the level of offering one's life. And he says, and you during the night you should meditate, and during the day you should follow your practice in whatever you're doing. And so here what you have to do is to serve them, and he has done this for 12 years, and for every year during these years he meditated, and also he had the rule of not having to touch, couldn't touch women and all of this. And so he does this for many years, and then one day they see him at certain point that he's there, and that is like kind of fluctuating, full of light, with a lot of beings around him, and they recognize him as a very realized person. And his minister is sold to a woman as a servant for also 12 years, and he stays with that woman for 12 years, washing the rice. He will stay the whole day washing rice, but actually what he was doing, both one and the other, was following a path of inner growth, both with formal meditation, but also when they were not in the formal meditation, and both attained realizations in that sense. And this is one example to say that, okay, in that painting, of which Lama Gangchen really cared a lot, there are many stories like this. These are the so-called 84 Mahasiddhas. One had like addiction to gambling, and his master told him, okay, you can continue gambling, but as you're gambling, think this. And so actually he was able to follow his spiritual path even with keeping gambling with the dices. So with this, what we're saying is that, okay, to be able to reach, to develop some inner qualities, it doesn't depend predominantly on the conditions where we find ourselves, but on how we live them. And often, to have conditions that are too good is not something that is so good, because one then gets completely lost in that, in the sense that we have a balance that, okay, we can see that, okay, it's quite shaky, we are well, but not so much. So the realm of gods is different. The realm of gods also is in the human realm. So everyone has his own or her own job, his own reality, familiar, social, and it's possible to apply inside of this deeper care of what we are and of how we interact with the world. And so when we find ourselves in front of conflicts, we shouldn't ask ourselves how much, we shouldn't ask ourselves how the other should behave. Like, for example, when we hear something on the news that we are so ready to say, this thing should be like that or should be in another way. Let's leave that aside and let's ask ourselves, what can I do in front of that situation? And here we have a certain difficulty. There is on one hand a strength, and on the other hand there's difficulty. It's not enough to do it once. It's not enough to go there and to say, no, yes, yeah, I felt that I need to do this. No, we need to fall in love with this inner peace and with the wish to reach this inner peace, the life that we have talked about before and visualized. Yes, I want it, but then we also need to work hard. Then we need to maintain that priority. And it's because of this that the advertisement needs to be revisited 1,000 times. I don't know. How many times have you seen like the advertisement of Coca-Cola? Many times. They still do it, don't they? Why? Because after a while, when you don't get it anymore, then after a while, no, then there is the other product. So as long as until something doesn't get so deeply rooted inside of us, or inside of ourselves, that we become that thing, then we need to receive the input. That is why in Buddhism there are images, symbologies that remember ourselves of this. What I called, a bit joking, the Buddhist advertisement, but that is like to be able to imagine a state of peace, is represented by the image of Buddha. Is represented by these beings that are called bodhisattvas, Buddhas. There are inner states that tell us, okay, this is possible and I want and I can reach that. So we need to repeat ourselves that. And at the end, without getting into details, now it's what is called the taking refuge. Is when I remember actually what I want. When we say in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. First of all, it means me, instead of taking refuge in a material reality in a certain way, and having people that treat me in a certain way, or and so on, I take refuge in the spiritual growth, in a process of inner development, that is the Dharma. And in order to do this, I need the help of who guides me and who accompanies me. That is the Buddha, the Guru, and then the Sangha. Through the practice of generosity, may I obtain, and the other perfections, may I obtain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of other sentient beings. So through the 6 perfections, generosity, morality, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I, through these practices, that is, by training, repeating, familiarizing with these qualities, may I develop them to their maximum potential and become a Buddha, so that I can help every being to get out of their suffering. Doesn't mean that I become Buddha and then I snap my fingers and everyone is well, but that I will find my way to adapt to the needs of everyone, and when I will be able to do more than what I can do today. So we repeat this verse every day, ideally 3 times a day, to redirect ourselves, to repeat ourselves what is the direction. Otherwise, there is a moment of inspiration that is beautiful, and then after a while, we lose it. We go back to our house, and we all have our problems, our pleasures, the worries, and we lose it in an instant. And that is why we need to come back constantly. And one last thing that is important in this is that the path needs to be done in 2 parts. Not only the Buddhist path in general, the path needs to be done in 2 parts. The first is the formal practice, that is the formal training, and then the so-called informal practice, the way that we live our lives every day. And so there is a moment where I sit, meditate, I recite some verses of aspiration, so-called prayers. I do something on purpose to familiarize with an inner state that I want to develop. There is the part of the sacred art, of the recitations, of the mantras. There is like infinite things that we can do, but there is the moment where we formally do it. And then there is the part where we apply the philosophy, the knowledge, and everything else, the Dharma, in daily life. How do we face daily life? And both things are important. And one of the fundamental aspects with this is that we need to create space, because the deeper changes don't happen on a conceptual level. They happen on a more like on the level of intuition, when there is like a sort of click at a certain point, and then something changes. How easy! But to get there, it was like tremendous difficulty. And then once that clicks, then it was very easy. It's like trivial thing. Why didn't I get it before? But in order to do that, to get there, then we need to dedicate a lot ourselves. But the good thing is that it's possible and that we are already doing it. Many of us, each one in his or her own way. And so the formal practice needs to be done. We need to meditate. We need to allow ourselves to be in silence. If we don't allow silence, then nothing else will come. Because when there is a lot of noise, we remain in the noise. We remain in the surface, on the surface. When there is a lot of noise, then we're not able to hear what is deeper. We are also not able to make something go deeper. Noise is not just about sound, it's also about all our senses, also about the mind sense. It's like with creativity. In order to be creative, we first need to allow ourselves to be bored. We need to be bored without being afraid of being bored, and then to transcend boredom, and from that creativity is born. And that is fundamental in our path, to have these moments of silence, to just stay there and to allow the mind to calm down slowly. And here there is the beauty of using mantras. Maybe sometimes just things more about the mystical aspect. Okay, I do the mantra and a miracle happens. The first miracle that can happen actually is that the mind comes down, that the inner dialogue comes down. You have given mind something else to do that starts from a sane principle, that has a sane goal, that has a positive reference. Maybe some other time we can go deeper on this argument, but to take one mantra and to have the habit of reciting it without getting into a dynamic of being productive. I don't know if I'm explaining myself, because I see that even with the mantras one wants to be productive. How many do I need to accumulate? 10,000. Okay, done. But it's not that. There are numbers that are given for mantra, but that is like an indication. Okay, at the basis one should do maybe 100,000, but that is to create some familiarity. But it's not like you do like a retreat. Okay, I have to do 100,000, then you get 100,000, not even one mantra more. Okay, done, retreat finished. So the point here is to create familiarity when we get to a point when there isn't any more distinction, and like the mind naturally also goes back to the mantra. And this does what the mantra word means, which is protection of mind. To protect the mind from what? Not from demons or whatever, but from our own stupid things. From all those thoughts, trivialities that are there, and from our rancors towards our past and on our entities in the present and worries about the future. And the beautiful thing is that when the mind relaxes, then it gets used to that. And someone asks me maybe, okay, what mantra should I recite? There are many. The truth is that they are all fine. You just need to recite them. You just need to try to do it. There is Om Mani Padme Hum, there is beautiful. There is Om Tare Tuttare Ture Soa, Om Muni. There are really many mantra that exist without getting into details now. there are many possible mantras, but if we create the habit of always calling back the mantra in our daily life, also when there is like a moment of anxiety, moment of fear, then we have like a place where we can bring our mind back to, and we recite the mantra, and that helps also because the mantra is directly connected with the place of refuge, with something that is sane, that is positive, sacred. Maybe another time we get into details on mantra, but for example, when we connect, for example, we have the mantra of Tara and we relate to Tara, this female Buddhas inseparable from our own guru, and we have a deep relationship of gratitude, of love, of trust. When we recite our mantra and we connect with Tara, and we connect with our guru, and we connect with this natural feeling of love and trust that naturally comes, and we have a place of refuge where we can go. And this is one of the most beautiful gifts, both in the moments of joy, but also in the moments of difficulty, without staying there and kind of go around. These are tools that have been used for thousands of years, and they have worked until now, and I don't see why they should stop working, but as I said before, they need to be used. And so I commit myself, maybe next week, to talk more about this, and maybe also to give some transmission. The fact is that we need to take in our hands the tools that we have and to breathe with awareness, to use a word in a way that is conscious, and to do a formal practice, to do things on purpose, to be more attentive, present, mindful, and also to apply that in the daily life, the everyday activities. One day, talking with one of my masters that was called Galakpala, that is interesting because he was someone from which I have received only one formal teaching, but I have lived many years next to him, 12 years, and in all these 12 years he has told me a lot in the daily life. And among these things, one day he told me, look, I have received the initiation of Yamantaka, this practice of meditation of this deity, when I was 17 years old. And when I received the initiation of Yamantaka, I took the commitment to recite the sadhana every day. There will be the meditation recited of. It's a practice that recited quickly. You need like 15, 20 minutes recited really, really quickly, like really fast, like you need like 15 minutes, like calmness, like half an hour, 1 hour, really, like if you do it slowly. And so he said, okay, I took that commitment and I've always kept it for like every day for 17 years, even when I was running away from Tibet with hunger, tired and everything. And I started to understand what I was reciting when I was like 50 years old. From when he was 17 until 50. And he said, for him, it has become a refuge, that someone that once he understood that, then he integrated it, and it was like part of his life fully, with a tremendous power. What I want to say is that the process of repeating, in that there doesn't need to be the expectation, and also not the pressure to already have understood, also have having already realized. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be able to experience, then slowly get there. And it's a difference between the Western and the Eastern approach. The Eastern approach, but also in Africa, also with music, I've seen that it's like that. For example, I've seen like some masters of music, traditional, and they teach you like one song that is difficult. Like they immediately give you one difficult song with an instrument. But why don't you start with like from the easy? No, you start from that. Once you've learned that, then everything else becomes easy. Then you learn everything else easily. The Eastern approach is that of that Chinese medicine doctor and teacher. Once he spent many years in China studying, and once he went to his master of Chinese medicine, as he was there, and he asked him whether he could learn calligraphy. And his master said, "Okay, usually I don't teach Westerners, but you have been many years. Okay, I teach you that." And so he goes that in the first lesson of calligraphy, he made him do an ideogram. How do you say? Chinese sign. Okay, well then he repeats that. Then it's always the same. Then the third lesson, still the same. Just one. Fifth lesson, 10th lessons, then still the same. Wow, what is this? I mean, are you kidding me? You think that I'm stupid? Then it kept him 1 year and a half doing the same ideogram. And he will go 3 times a week, 1 hour and 1 hour and a half a time, doing the same ideogram. At a certain point, he was like, okay. He didn't even ask, okay? He was just sitting there and he will start doing that, the same ideogram. One day, the master sees him and decides to teach him 30 ideograms in the same day. And then from there, he teaches him many other ideograms. And the thing is that when he saw that I was doing an ideogram without thinking and I had the right weight, and I kind of had realized that ideogram, then he taught me all the others and I learned them perfectly with an incredible speed. That is, the process is that first you create experience and you become, and then you apply that on everything else. But we start from the opposite modus operandi. That is, we start with the head. It's a completely different way. It's like we have to understand, and also there is a tradition of masters of carpentry. And when one wants to learn that, okay, first one needs to be accepted by the master, which is not obvious at all. And after a lot of effort and trials in that, and when you're accepted as a disciple of carpentry, then every day you have to go and work with him. So in his working hours, if he starts like at 7, then you start at 7. If you are not there for one day, then okay, you will not ever be there again. And so for then the first 2 or 3 years, then you go there every day, you stay there the whole day with all the master of carpentry, and you just observe. You can't just do nothing, like not even like take the hammer or take a nail. You just have to observe 8 hours, 10 hours, 7 days a week, all year long. You're just there observing. You see, you look, and you look at the same thing. And one day when he decides, and then maybe he says, okay, can you give me the hammer? It's not like he says, okay, from today we start. And then he says, okay, do this thing, do that other thing, and then you're able to do it very well. It's a completely different approach. If we go to someone and we want to learn to do something and it doesn't even give us the hammer, or it doesn't give us the tool that we want to learn, then it's like we get frustrated. It's like completely different approaches. So let's try at least to put the two together, to not be already in the hurry. Okay, that we sit, and so we sit, we breathe calmly, we recite the mantra, and we see that it moves something inside of us and it becomes part of us, and then after that everything becomes more easy, more smooth, and it's possible. It's something that we can integrate in our lives, that is already part of the reality in which we find ourselves. And so there is hope for each one of us. I've already seen changes that I would have never expected. Okay, there were cases where I thought, okay, here the only solution is to die and be reborn. I've already thought about that. Really, because I would see situations where it's like, okay, like on a chemical level, like it was something that it was like such a deep habit of being so, feeling so bad. Okay, let's just do a reset. And I've seen changes also there. Really, were some situations where I really kind of lost hope, but then I saw the change actually. So there aren't really desperate situations, but we need to do it. We need to commit ourselves, and we can really do a lot. I ask you only this, to really put yourself in the game without fear and without justifying and victimizing ourselves, and also without boasting, which also it's like a big trick, like you start the path in a sincere way, and then you do it for a while, and then you want to do it because you want to be the good practitioner. And so that's why you also say that one should practice in secrecy. Like once that I've been to one of my masters, the abbot of Tashirumpo in India, a wonderful person, and at his house there was a master called Takpo Rinpoche, who lives in France. He was there at his place. He was also his disciple. And one day I get inside of his house. He didn't have the wooden door. It was just like a cloth door. And as I walk by, okay, he was doing his practice, and for a few seconds I am able to see him because the wind moves the cloth. He was sitting on a perfect meditation posture. At a certain point, he realizes that I am observing him, and as I do that, then he pretends that he's sleeping. And the lesson that I had from that, look here, he doesn't want to create the image that I'm a good practitioner. So there was once, and we end this with this image. Okay, once Lama Gangchen used to live here, and one morning I was sleeping on the couch here, and in the apartment there is only one bathroom where you had to go through Lama Gangchen's room. Usually there would be like 8 or 10 people sleeping in that tiny apartment. But anyway, once in the early morning I go through because I need to go to the bathroom, and I open the door and I see Lama Gangchen sitting, meditating. He was sitting. I don't remember if he was naked or not. I remember he was really like a person that didn't have any problems with that. Was sitting perfectly, meditation in front of the shrine. And I remember of seeing that magic moment of being there for a moment, and then he realizes that I'm there, and he pretends, and he just says, "I know, pass by and go to the bathroom and here and there." It's also this thing that one practices seriously, really doesn't want to show that, and also doesn't want to hide it, because then also that becomes something to boast about. We need to do it seriously, sincerely, without hiding it, without boasting ourselves, but trying to practice in the most deep and sincere way with ourselves, starting from those small things that we're able to do. And then we can see that it's working. This is all. Sorry, I opened a door of joy. I ask you only this: life passes by quickly, so either we do it or we don't do it. At the end, it's that. If we sit there and wait for the day that will happen, then it will not happen. Okay? And we can all do it, really. I've seen where I would less expect it. So now we make our dedications and then we will meet again next week. This weekend I will be in Albagnano. Tomorrow I'll be in Florence. Then in the weekend I will be in Albagnano.